Hello, my lovelies. Recently, I read a TikTok favorite, and that was Kingdom of the Wicked. And I also read its sequel, although I will not be reviewing the sequel for reasons I will get into in this video. So, without any further ado, grab your snacks, grab your drinks, and let's talk Kingdom of the Wicked. Here we are in Italy. What time period? We don't really know. Besides, it might be the Renaissance, but the author doesn't exactly tell us when it is. But anyway, we follow a young girl named Amelia. She is a little witch, and she lives with her family at their family restaurant, which consists of her mom, her dad, her grandma, and her younger sister, Vittoria, which I kept calling Victoria, so I'm probably just going to call her Victoria because I really don't think I'm pronouncing her proper name right. And I really hate to mispronounce names. So anyway, she's a witch. She lives with her witchy grandma, her witchy sister, her witchy mom. They're all witches and they live in secret. Everything is fine, and then one day, other witches that they know of in their town start showing up unalived. And eventually, this comes to Amelia's front door when her sister, Victoria, is then taken out. And this in turn leads to her grandma telling her about the existence of princes of hell, and Amelia sets off on a path of revenge after making a deal with one of these 7 princes of hell known as Wrath. Well, with all of this out of the way, this being the premise, let's go ahead and talk about our characters. With this book supposed to be an enemies to lovers book, I decided to just go ahead and talk about our 2 main leads and then the other things that I have, to say about this book. Our first character is, of course, our leading lady, Amelia. She's reckless, she's brazen, and she's a bit of a hothead. And while I liked quite a bit about our main character, sometimes it's clear that she has some plot armor, and there are moments where it feels as if the consequences were just too late for her. Amelia does some really, really dumb stuff, and then putting so many that she cares about in danger and suffers no more than what feels like a slap on the wrist. Other times, we are told that she is just so smart. She's so smart and so clever, and that she's so powerful and she's so amazing, right? And so different, she's not like other girls. And yet there are clues that are the clues are so obvious to a lot of the things that we spend literally 2 books, because I read the second one as well, Kingdom of the Cursed, which I did buy them both in hardback at the same time for $1 each at like the Goodwill or something. I did, but I've been looking for them all week to film this review, so I just decided to go ahead and review it with just the pictures up on the wall, because I don't know where the hell I put them. But anyway, we're told she's so smart, but yet she can't figure out these really obvious clues that I was able to piece together, things that happen that are just revealed in the second book. Like towards the end of the second book are things that were hinted at in the beginning that I already figured out. So if our really super smart character can't figure out these very obvious things, I don't get it. And one thing that I will say is I like these characters. The characters in this book are fine. These books were just fine. But I really feel like for as much as these books were being talked about, I expected a hell of a lot more when it came to just Amelia being a hero that I could really connect with. And I thought this was going to be just a knocked it out of the park kind of book for as much hype as it had on TikTok. Now, let's go ahead and talk about our leading man, Wrath. Let's go ahead and talk about Wrath. For a literal prince of hell and one of the 7 deadly sins, he sure didn't strike fear in me at any point in these books. He was good in some places, and so don't get me wrong, okay? Please don't get me wrong. He only gets mad because of the deal that they have and then what it means for him. But he really shouldn't be mad, all things considered. With later on context, I recalled his initial reaction to her, and it made no sense. Because there are things revealed in the second book that make his reaction to being, summoned and then made to make a deal with Amelia at the very beginning It really makes no sense why he had that reaction. The rest of the time, he is just moody, edgy, and acts as if he doesn't give an F. Something that we've seen so many times in a lot of these kinds of books. Specifically, enemies to lovers books. I mean, think about Rhysand, Tamlin, just a lot of moody dudes with I don't give an F attitude. While done enough for me to read the rest and to get to the second book after was only because of the idea in my head that the next installment would be so much better paced and that things would be heating up, because there's a lot of things revealed at the very end. I thought things would heat up, and it really didn't. And in my opinion, it really made it frustrating, and nothing seriously happens in the next one at all, leaving these huge gaps of where nothing is going on in between these places where a lot of things will happen out of nowhere. There are times where I had to go back a few pages to even make sure that I hadn't accidentally skipped a page or two. And it happened with both of these books as I read them. And I'm not going to spoil anything for anyone, because at the end of the day, I think these books were just fine. I think they were really overhyped, and I really feel like they deserved just a few needed touches. I would have liked for there to be more descriptions of surroundings throughout the entire story. A lot of the places that we go to are hardly described, and much is left up to your own imagination. The only thing that seemed to be described well and in detail was the food. Food comes up quite a bit, considering that it's one of the biggest things that we know about Amelia. Her family has a restaurant. Her sister and her like to bake and cook and do all this stuff, for the restaurant. It's one of the biggest things that we know about her, and probably the most detailed parts in this book are just descriptions of food. When it comes to buildings or places or people or anything like that, we only get like a very, very basic description, and nothing really feels we aren't even really told the time period or how what kind of clothing people are wearing to kind of piece that together to kind of get a bigger feel of the world that we're in. I didn't really feel immersed in this world, and I feel like that was due to the lack of descriptions. I didn't feel immersed. I felt like I was just reading a story, because there wasn't enough to take me fully into the world, if you know what I mean. Secondly, the princes of hell themselves. I feel like I was not threatened by them at any point in either of the first two books in this series. I did not feel threatened by the princes of hell and the 7 deadly sins, and I feel like that was a huge detriment to the story and the stakes involved with this story. And, for example, I wrote an example down. There's a moment where her grandma gets attacked and more. No spoilers, but they were directly in the path of one of the 7 deadly sins, aka the princes of hell, in this particular moment. Yet once Amelia shows up and does barely anything, she just kind of yells at them to stop, they leave, and then immediately after, they aren't seen. Her family isn't seen or in any more danger for the rest of the time. In the first book, we don't even get really any word about her family in the second book at all. Like her grandma, her mom, everyone is just kind of gone. And I get it. It's because of, things I'm not going to spoil, because she's completely in basically another dimension, which is hell. But I'm not going to say any more than that. I mean, I think we kind of all knew that it would lead there. I mean, yeah. So, she shows up, they leave, and yet they get to flee, but the demon was able to locate them from simply, getting into Amelia's head, and was able to locate them. But then, shouldn't it be easier to capture them, or whatever they mean to do with her family in the beginning, if they were near her family during this moment? Wouldn't it be easier to track them down and then to capture them without Amelia knowing if she's in hell and her family are still on Earth? Yet, this Prince of Hell just takes her one interaction with them and leaves her family alone. That made no sense. A literal Prince of Hell, determined to make sure that Amelia's life and what she's doing, trying to make sure that she stops, has her family basically in their grasp, and yet doesn't do anything with that. Made no sense. I found myself expecting them to be found later on in hell with her, and maybe in a cell, being tortured, or being used as some kind of bargaining chip, and it doesn't happen. Neither in the first book or the second book after that one interaction where her grandma gets attacked. It doesn't happen. And all they do to her is the equivalent of party tricks and state nearly as much a few times in the book. All they do to her is what the characters themselves deem to be nothing more than party tricks. That's all they do to her in these 2 books. And try to it's just the equivalent of party tricks. A few times that I can, and the few times I can remember, they remind us as such. Reminding her and us in turn that what's going on is just a tiny bit of what their true powers are like. So why did I find myself not feeling at all the fear or intimidation that Amelia is supposed to be feeling? Because they're doing the equivalent of party tricks, and we're being told that. So why don't we see any more of their true power, either in the first book or the second book? And just keep getting fed these party tricks. I didn't feel intimidated. I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel the stakes of being around these people, besides the fact that they can get in her head and influence her emotions. And a lot of the time, it's because they just want to bang her. There were things I liked. I liked a lot of the interactions between Amelia and Wrath. I feel like there was quite a few moments where I wish they would have just exploded on each other and just explained what was going on each of their sides of what was going on. Because there was a real lack of communication, and it felt like there was too much of a lack of communication between our 2 main characters. Both are doing their own thing, which is fine. They can both do their own thing, their own investigations. That is fine. But when your main characters literally have pieces of the puzzle to get to this gigantic revelation for 2 whole books, and are so close very many times to explaining to each other these things, or having this kind of communication, they just don't. They just don't. They get mad at each other, and then they go their separate ways for like a chapter or 2. Why don't they just explain it? Y'all are having these really heated emotional arguments. Just explain. Just explain. I found myself getting so mad. I'm like, just tell him. Just tell him. Just tell her. One of you 2. Be the bigger person and just say what you're actually thinking. And there would be moments where it's just like, it made no sense for them to keep withholding this information. To just keep withholding it and just keep withholding it. Like, there's a moment where they're literally like put into a room together against both of their wishes after having another one of these blow up arguments where they just separate and stuff. And it's like, y'all are both stuck in this room together. Just talk. Quit like dancing around the subject and just get down to business and just talk. Just talk. And then when they finally do, the big stuff happens at the end of the second book. It's like, fucking finally. And I feel like I shouldn't have had to wait for 2 books for these 2 to talk about stuff. And things that aren't even that deep. Not like a big confession of feelings, but like things imperative to their safety in the moment. Things imperative to their safety in the moment of the books. Like, just explain. Just explain. Please. Talk to each other. Y'all are the 2 main leads, and y'all are investigating the same fucking thing. Why are you withholding really important key pieces of information from each other? It made me so frustrated. And at the end of the day, this book was fine. I felt like it was fine. Personally, I was just frustrated a lot because I felt like a lot of the things that I've already explained to you guys throughout this entire video. And will I read the 3rd one? Probably not. I don't think I will. I feel like it's going to be more of the same, and this book is fine for you. If you read this book and you're fine, that's cool. This is just my opinion, a random person on the internet. It's why it's called The Random Show. I'm just a random person on the internet talking about whatever I want to talk about. At the end of the day, I feel like these books were fine. Not good, not bad, just fine, and maybe really overhyped on TikTok, in my opinion. If you like if you liked these books and you want to keep reading them and you think they're the greatest thing ever, That's awesome. I'm glad you're reading. I'm glad that you're reading and you're enjoying these characters in this world that has been built. I'm really happy for you. And there's quite a few books that I personally don't like that a lot of people love. But these are just my opinions. Again, I'm a random person on the internet. Don't take everything I say seriously or let my opinion on a book influence your ability or your want to read it or your curiosity or anything like that. Personally, I don't even like watching reviews before I read a book. I like to watch reviews after and then see if how I felt is how other people felt. So, yeah, don't say what I take too seriously. This is just my opinion. I think these books are fine. That's it. They were just fine. They could have benefited from, more detail and a little bit more stakes because we're literally going to hell and it's so pressed to us that this is so dangerous and so awful and so scary. And yet when we actually got there, I didn't feel that way from the princes or the environment or anything. I just feel like everybody should have just gotten in a big room together and discussed what the hell was going on. So I'm going to go ahead and give Kingdom of the Wicked and Kingdom of the Cursed the same score, which is a solid middle of the road 5 out of 10. That's what I got. I just feel like this book could have benefited from just a little bit more. A lot of the times I feel like books need to take things out. But this time I feel like the author really should have taken the time and put just a little bit more into this book, and then it would have been so awesome. The concept was great. The concept, the premise, everything was great. It had the building blocks to be so awesome. And it just got a little bit lower than that, in my opinion. But yet everyone was saying it was like so fantastic on TikTok, and that's why I decided to try these because I seen them at the Goodwill, not Walmart. Why I was gonna say Walmart. Goodwill. Seen them at Goodwill. They were $1 each. I decided to try it, but yeah. So that's what I got. If you liked this video, maybe give me a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I don't just talk about this stuff. I talk about books, movies, TV shows, internet news. I do gameplay. I do a whole bunch of things. That's why it's the random show. Random for a reason. I do whatever I randomly want to do or whatever I want to talk about. So, yeah. I hope you stick around. I love you all so much, and I hope you have the best day. Bye!